board in relation to the Patterson sand operations along Highway 18 bypass. At the request of several constituents, I'm asking the council to consider the possibility of filing a petition with the Surface Transportation Board for a declaratory order requesting that STB declare that specific operations conducted in the city of Prairie, Chien at a transloading facility claimed to be performed by the Wisconsin Southern Railroad do not constitute transportation by a rail carrier, and that the considerable I skipped the line. And that the city zoning and other regulations are therefore not preempted under 49 USC 1050 letter B. While there is considerable documentation regarding this issue, the city administrator has included several things in his memo for the council to review. So you have that in your packet, and you also have email, I believe, from Kyle Patterson regarding his company's position on this issue under operations. So I'll start out by just saying where we're at, in my view. This has been ongoing for over a year. We've done our best. We've worked with Patterson Sand Company, trying to get them to keep us informed of what's going on. I've had several of the people that live down there have come forward to me and think that we need to do something. And they're not against Patterson Sand Company being in business, just don't think that's the right place for them. And we've looked at several different things along the way, and I feel that at this point, looking at going to the Surface Transportation Board to get an answer one way or another if their operations are exempt under the federal preemption laws or not. That's the big question in my mind, is if they are preempted, I don't know if there's anything we can do about it from there. But if they're not preempted, then they would possibly be subject to our zoning codes and laws. So, do you got anything to add to that, Aaron?
Not at this point.
Oh, sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
I talked to Garth about this afternoon a little bit, and I think you guys were handed out a little demo. But I think when I first read the council packet, it seems like it's kind of an all or nothing thing. But I'm going to make a motion, and it's going to be kind of based on what's been handed out to you guys. But I think it's not really all or a nothing thing. I think we can go forward to the Surface Transportation Board and just with an informal request, and maybe Tom, I'll ask you this, because I think there was a cost associated with going forward with a formal ruling and determining whether they're preempted or not, and then kind of going forward and stopping the operations. But I think if we just go forward, I mean, they're an advisory board, so if we go to them and ask them for a clarification on the whether or not they are federally preempted, and then also at that same time ask them to investigate to make sure that the operations are meeting all the federal environmental, noise, and safety regulations that need to be met. I think we can write that letter and request that. We can also, I think, request, and this is in this memo that Garth had just provided, but it was also in other memos, and the rail line is actually owned by the Wisconsin River Rail Transit Commission. Do you guys remember that? And they have a deal worked out with the railroad company to operate that there. And I would like to also request that they work with them, send a letter to them, and ask their opinion to weigh in to make sure that the operation there does meet all federal regulations and state regulations. And so at least we can get those rulings in their input, and then we can go from there. So I don't think that will cost, either of those will cost the city any money. Tom?
Well, thank you very much.
At this point,
Wait. Just for clarification, was that a motion?
yeah, did you, Should I summarize my motion? Because I feel like I'm
I'm gonna assume it's bullet points
Yeah,
2 and 4.
yeah, so on
So-
this thing,
Let me read it back, and then you tell me if that's correct, and then we'll get a second.
okay.
Your motion would be to request an informal regulatory clarification from the Surface Transportation Board on whether or not the Pattison sand operations as structured falls within federal preemption. At the same time, ask the Surface Transportation Board to investigate the Pattison sand operation in terms of compliance with federal environmental noise and safety regulations. Furthermore, submit a request to the Wisconsin River Rail Transit Commission that owns the improvements upon which the WSOR operates to find that the transload operation is in violation of the lease agreement between WSOR and WRRTC and for it to cease. Those would be all done concurrently. Is that your motion, Ms. Hine?
Yes, but maybe not, just to investigate, to make sure they are, so I don't necessarily know, and for it to cease. I mean, to investigate, to make
Okay,
sure
so
they're
strike that
not.
last portion.
Right,
and
so
just so-
I want them to make sure they're not in violation of the lease, and I think the lease basically says that they need to comply with all air and water safety regulations.
And I'm reading from a prepared document so that you understand 6 different scenarios were laid out, everything from the maximum on one side to doing nothing. So that's what we're referring to. So I didn't do this in shorthand real quickly, but I'm reading off of a document, which is a public record. That is the motion.
It's my,
That is your motion. Need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, now Judy, you had your hand up?
I do. I'm confused when, Kathleen, you were saying that it doesn't cost the city anything.
My understanding that a letter doesn't, my understanding that if we want to formally petition them for a ruling, that would, although I know in this memo it says it does cost, just, I don't understand why just asking them, they're there for our protection, the Surface Transportation Board, why just sending a letter, that's why I looked at Tom when I said that. I'm not sure if sending them a letter, just sending a letter.
There's basically 3 levels. One is the informal opinion letter, which I think you're thinking of, an informal decision and declaratory order. And from what I can tell, but again, the stuff I'm reading is not current. I have a call into the Surface Transportation Board last week, as a matter of fact, and I have not heard from them, but the prices that are being quoted here are circa 2005. Now, granted, I can't believe that they have escalated dramatically, but I'm sure they have escalated. The informal opinion that you're talking about in 2005 at least had no cost associated with it as far as the filing. But the other thing I think you have to keep in mind is that the informal opinion is just that. It has no binding effect any more than the informal decision has any binding effect. The only way you're going to have something with precedential value would be a declaratory order in this particular matter. And you go any way you can. I think the idea makes some sense that the mayor came up with, and that is that let's go get some direction here. The other thing I caution you is that an aggrieved party, which, you know, I think we fall into that classification, can certainly ask for it, just as any other, you know, person can that has some standing. That would be that I could show I am aggrieved, but it is discretionary. What I gain by that is that they could say we're not going to. Okay. And I guess I weigh that also with you saying, good, you know, let's go ahead and get an informal opinion. I don't know how enlightening that's going to be, I'll be frank with you. I think it may be kind of a feel-good thing, but to have something with some weight in it, you got to go the whole way. If you're looking for something to say, fine, you know, are we going to be able to get an inkling what's going on here from them, or some direction they may be pointing us towards, probably the way to go. But I think once you have that, you might want to give some thought to something more formal with some binding effect.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought process, that we would go forward with this at no cost to the city, feel it out, and then, I mean, we can always do, there are, like Aaron said, there's the extremes here of doing nothing versus saying right now they're violating our city ordinances. I'll make a motion to shut them down. I mean, that's the extreme, saying we don't believe they have federal preemption, therefore it should be shut down. So, I mean, that's an extreme we could also go. And this isn't to say we can't come back and do that later, but now we're just taking the first step to kind of feeling it out. Then if we want it more formal, whether they're preempt or not, we can go forward with that formal letter, and then if they are not preempt, then we can say, yes, you are violating our ordinances, you cannot operate there. I mean, those would be the.
And if I can just quickly respond, and I'll get off this, I think other people have questions here, and that is, nothing costs nothing. I mean, there's, I guess what I'm saying is, when it's all said and done, I would like at least some leeway with some sort of budget in it, that we can at least go to somebody that has done this before. And I've done it 35 years and I've never done this, okay? I don't think it's brain surgery by any stretch of the imagination, but procedurally, I'm sure there's some things out there that it might be nice if we had a little bit of a budget here to say, good, we have the ability to go out and find somebody that has on a regular basis. I was talking to a friend of mine who works for the railroad. He's an attorney for me. He said, we've got a whole floor of people that do that. So there are people out there, and it may be something that procedurally we want to sit down and spend an hour or two with somebody that actually does this.
So are you,
I'll
I mean,
go with somebody else.
I mean, we just talked, how much do we have left in our, I mean, we have a lot of money in our contingency from 2012. I mean, I'm not saying, is this something that's, no, I mean, we have more than, the quote here is $5,000, and it won't. So what I'm saying, do you want a separate motion? Can I keep this motion on the table, and then you said you would feel more comfortable if we said we would allow Tom up to X amount of dollars to.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
all right.
Yeah, I just don't want to come back, and I don't want to nickel and dime this thing either.
Right.
If you're serious about it, let's go forward, let's take a look. I can't in my wildest imagination think we're gonna go over that, but I don't want to be coming back here halfway through and say, oh, guess what, you know, this thing is exploded. And I think that's a realistic.
Go ahead, Ron.
Oh, I'm not a lawyer, but I just want
Put
to.
your mic on, Ron.
It's on, he's got it.
It's on.
All right.
I want to make sure I have this straight in my mind. As I understand it, the U.S. Constitution gives Congress the right to regulate interstate commerce. That would include railroads. And Congress has not delegated any of that authority to state or local governments. Congress has retained that authority. And so municipal regulations do not apply to regular railroad operations, is that correct?
Interstate.
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 So the question is whether this sand loading operation is an integral part of an interstate railroad operation, is that right?
Yes. I think in simplest terms, correct. I think there's other issues that come into it.
And so,
Whether it falls under the previous contract.
and so if the federal government says that it does not, then our municipal ordinances would apply. And if they did, what is the zoning down there?
Riverfront.
Under our current zoning, it is riverfront. Patterson Sand would have the option to file for a conditional use permit. That is actually where this discussion began nearly 2 years ago, was for a conditional use permit before the Plan Commission. That would not come before the council. The Plan Commission would be, if we go that route, the final voice on whether or not that use is permitted, like we do with many other conditional uses throughout the community.
Go ahead, Gene.
So just to clarify in my mind, we're talking very much about a particular operation. But if we went forward with this, that could potentially shut down that area for any business in town loading anything, which is, and it's, my understanding is they've been loading stuff down there for quite a few years. And how would that impact other places? You know, the trains run right through the middle of town. And you know, anything a train does is close to a neighborhood. How would that impact potentially the use of the train elsewhere in town? I guess I don't understand how that would impact a wider audience.
I don't see that as an issue because I'm not aware of another location in the city where unloading is done as a non-compatible zoning use. Where other zoning and loading is that's zoned industrial or that's a compatible use.
Frank?
The information that Ms. Hine is asking for, I believe we were given it 2 or 3 times over the last 2 years. Every time we tried to make a decision or on the zoning issue down there, we were given information, both on paper and verbally, that all federal laws pre-exempt us. And I just feel that you're never going to please everybody. Everybody that lives in the city of Prairie has to put up with some type of nuisance once in a while. We're talking about a major, I believe, a major, even though it's not a large area, a major employer in times where jobs are hard to find. We got DNR letters that the mayor and the city administrator received a couple, 3 weeks ago. Something was going wrong down there, they fixed it. A few times they've come to the council and asked for better lighting to make it better for their neighborhood. We turned them down. So I don't know if this is some hidden attack, I don't want to really use attack, but way to shut them down and get them out of the city of Prairie Chien. And also when we started this discussion, we told the people that we were going to work to try to find a new area that would work out for everybody. And we continue to do that. There's land to the south, there's land to the north. One last point, if that's riverfront, what is anything down south of there or north, if anything else wants to go in there, what, are we gonna have to give those people conditional use permits? Or are they gonna fall under such as, and I don't want to, Mr. Dilma's project, is that riverfront or has that been zoned?
That's industrial.
Okay,
I checked on that.
Okay.
That's the first thing I wanted
Thank
to
you.
find out, and that is industrial.
thank you.
I think it's Wells Street, was it Wells Street North, is riverfront?
Yep.
And to come up with another budget when we had hard times telling other people that they couldn't have the money to fund different projects or equipment, to start spending a lot of money on and using our contingency fund, I don't know, it just, I feel for the people, but like I said before, everybody that lives in the city of Prairie is affected one way or another by some sort of industry, and I don't want to deter other industries to come say, well, people, you don't want to build in Prairie because people don't want nuisances around their properties.
Chien?
I think the reason this is being brought up is because the citizens want us to bring it up, and we have due diligence to them to do so. I live in a lot closer district. Part of my district is affected by this, so I probably hear a lot more than you do, Frank. I agree with Kathleen's motion. I don't think we should put a dollar amount on it that we're willing to spend up to. I think the money we're looking at is a very small amount to pay for what we should have to do. There was money set aside. I believe we allotted so much money at one time about a year ago to look at alternate sites. I don't know what happened. I know we got a lot of that, or some of it back, all of it back. So I don't know,
Can
was
I answer that? The Common Council agreed to provide Patterson Sand and I believe the railroad up to $50,000 to do a rail site study. The end result was there was no alternative site within the city limits. Patterson spent $31,000 of our tax dollars and paid us back every dime. They cut a check back to us for that study and essentially paid for it themselves. But the result was there was no alternative site based on that rail site study.
I would urge everyone to maybe revisit that and maybe look at TID 7. For instance, there is, I don't know.
TID 7 is a privately owned tax increment finance district.
So maybe we should look at alternative sites, because that's how we can all live happily ever after on this, because until we do, we're not gonna, so.
Linda?
While we're on this, I don't want to bring up the health issue, but I would like our city administrator to clarify what he meant by saying there was no imminent health threat.
On February 5th, I was notified, I believe the mayor and city planner Frabel were notified by Marty Sellers of the Department of Natural Resources of an alleged air violation by Patterson Sand. I received that email early in the morning. I contacted Mr. Sellers and asked him to explain what the allegations were. My follow-up question was, is there an imminent health threat to the neighborhood? Imminent means, do I need to evacuate the neighborhood? Do I need to have the police go to door? Mr. Sellers stated, there is no imminent health threat. This is a minimal level. This is the lowest level of violation. So the statement that there was no imminent health threat is what it is. I'm sorry some people have misconstrued that. We were asking a question, do we need to go down there? Do we need to get people out of that area? Nothing sinister was implied by that. We were expressing our concern for the health of the neighbors. And I quickly relayed that information to the mayor and to the other staff members. In the event that we had an imminent health threat, that we could act quickly. But there was no imminent health threat. These are alleged violations. And once again, I apologize if it was misconstrued, if it was misunderstood by residents. I will not apologize if the statement was used incorrectly by people for a different reason. I'm just stating I was relaying the information. We are concerned about the health. We acted quickly, within minutes of getting that notice, so that we could have acted if we had to. And fortunately, we did not. So I appreciate the opportunity to explain the position. We were simply looking out for the neighborhood. But there is no imminent. Imminent means immediate health threat.
Ron?
In regard to that, I think people who in good faith believe that there is a health hazard ought to contact the public health department, and that is in the county government, not the city government, and I would urge people to do that.
I did ask Gloria Wall, Crawford County Public Health, in an email dated Wednesday, February 13th, the direction of Ms. Tittlebach, Chairman of the Protection and Health Committee. I'm writing you today at the request of the city, asking if any complaints. The response, 0 complaints have been filed with the County Health Department regarding the operation.
Anybody else in the council have any questions or comments? All right, I'm going to call on some people here down the list. We'll have 3 minutes. Try and stay on point. We don't want clapping or hollering or anything like that. Just get up there and state what you want to state. And Officer Sprossi is the timekeeper. Once you get up there and start talking, we will time it. If 3 minutes are up, I'm cutting you off. So, first one on the list here. Well, all right, we'll take the second one on the list then, because the first one's a different topic. Brian Baird. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Brian Baird.
Yeah, and I'm here as state counsel for the Wisconsin Southern, really to respond to any questions that the council has.
Okay, well, does anybody on the council have a question? Karen?
Just out of curiosity, in regards to the Surface Transportation Board, what are your general feelings, opinions, what direction kind of deal?
Come to the podium, please, too, so the people at home can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I'm Brian Baird. I'm state counsel for the Wisconsin Southern as well. I'm state litigation counsel for the Union Pacific Railroad, for Canadian National Railroad, and I do some CP work as well. My practice is limited to railroad law. So I'm involved with the STB. That certainly is the national agency that appropriately one would go to deal with an issue such as conflicts between ordinances in a community and a railroad that's operating in your community. So that's the right agency to work with. I guess a comment in terms of context, every community in the state of Wisconsin, and I work statewide, has its concerns from time to time regarding the operation of the railroads in that community, as you can imagine. Railroads are noisy, and there's diesel fumes and so forth. The horns irritate people. From a litigation standpoint, I guess what I say to you and to your community is that as long as there are people who want to sit down and work with each other, that's always, in my experience, a better result than litigation, whether it's in certain courts or whether it's in the agencies in Washington. This is a very, very important issue for Pattison Sand, of course, for the Wisconsin Southern Railroad, for the state of Wisconsin, truly. And the state, through its commissions, owns the rail track. If you guys are aware of that, the state's worked very hard and spent a lot of money trying to keep all of our communities connected by rail. Obviously, we know it helps our road infrastructure. We know that it helps the national interstate commerce. We know it allows smaller communities to thrive and to flourish. So it's incredibly important. And the Surface Transportation Board on a national level understands that how important that is and looks at these issues from that framework. To go there formally and litigate this is a very long process. The letter is not. The initial informal letter is not. But the process, as was mentioned, to go and have an evidentiary hearing in Washington, D.C. is a big deal. We're talking about years rather than months and significant resources that typically railroads and communities don't want to spend. And so the one thing I'd say is, as long as there are people who in good faith want to sit down and try to resolve issues, and certainly Wisconsin Southern does, I believe Pattison Sand does, that really is the course that hopefully with the community and the rail carrier would employ, first and foremost. And really, any questions that you might have, I'm happy to answer or try to respond to. Thank you very much.
Kyle Pattison. Three minutes, Kyle.
My name's Kyle Pattison, and I spoke to many of you here, and really my intent is, just as Brian said, is to do what we can to minimize the impact and to explain what's going on so people are comfortable with what we're doing. And through forums like this, I've been presented with questions, try to answer them. As far as concerned citizens, actually I've had more people come up to me and be supportive of what we're doing. And actually I don't recall anybody coming up personally of that area and asking them concerns, and I welcome them to come up, and I'll do the best I can or have some of our support people answer questions. I'm confident that there is no health concern, and again, our impacts in the community are the same or less than other impacts on the community as other people have spoken. Anyway, if you have any questions, I can answer them. That's really all I have to say.
Thanks, Kyle. Oh, you got one question, Sharon? All right, go ahead.
Yeah, Kyle, I was just wondering, would you trade places to live right by, what you're doing now? I'm not being sarcastic, but, if you had the
That's
best
all right.
noise.
Actually, I spent 8 years living in the river terminal where I worked. That it took me 15 seconds to get to work, so I lived right where I worked and right next to a dump pit. I lived next to a quarry, and actually I just built a house there next to a quarry that's within a block of the quarry. So it really, and again, everybody's life experience is different. I've grown up around industry and it doesn't bother me, and certainly other people haven't. We all have different life experiences and tolerances, so the simple answer would be yes, I have and will. And
Okay, thanks, Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle. Beth Reagan, Pattison Sand Company.
I'm prepared to answer some further questions, but I'd like to make a couple statements about the letters from DNR. We were not aware of the industrial tier 2 provision to have a on-site or a total site stormwater plan. As a result, we've been working with DNR and plan to submit the industrial tier 2 stormwater plan on this Thursday in 2 days. Certainly, our intent was not to avoid permits, since we had already applied for and received 2 air exemptions for the mobile conveyors and the activities at the rail site. As mentioned in previous city council meetings, when asked about a stormwater permit for the proposed parking improvements and the paving, we responded that it was under development. When we met with DNR on January 15th, we had with us the draft stormwater plan, which was in development at that point in time. In regard to the letter regarding the air, the alleged violation, we believe the alleged violation may not have been a violation. As you probably read in our transmittal letter to DNR on Friday, February 22nd, the sand is unloaded at 190 degrees and causes steam when it comes in contact with ambient air. As a result, to that end, we have employed several modifications immediately. We have fabricated custom curtains or shrouds around the trailer hopper. I believe you guys have pictures of those. Because we currently have 3 types of trailers, we have 3 sets of custom shrouds. Where the material falls onto the conveyor, we have also developed a custom enclosure. We've installed a 6-inch vacuum hose from the custom enclosure to the conveyor bag house. And I believe you also have a picture of that. I have a couple with me, if not. I might be closing in on 3 minutes. I'll be happy to answer any further questions, but I am here for questions.
Does anybody in the council here have a question for Beth? Chien?
Just one quick one, Beth. I know you had it, probably were the lead person on the alternate site, and there was just nothing you could revisit, no other place to look at, nothing at all to say on this spreadsheet.
I don't know that we can say that. You know, it's a different time, there may be different circumstances. I believe there is that opportunity there.
Thanks, Beth. Scott Klickner, am I saying that right? Right here? Is he out there somewhere? No, Klickner? Sorry, did I say it
Here he
wrong?
comes.
Butchered his name.
That's Scott.
Hi there, my name is Scott Klickner. I work for Patterson Sand. I guess I'm here just to explain how something like this would affect me. If something happens and we're not able to distribute sand through where we're going, I'm sure that would mean layoffs and things like that, which would be economic strife for me and also everywhere I do business with. So, I mean, my wife and I spend most of our disposable income in Prairie. We shop here, we buy our clothes, our shoes, everything. I just feel that some issues have to be addressed. If there's problems, my idea is the best way to solve some of these problems is through communications and compromise. And I think we can all figure some common ground out somewhere to find some compromises. I know issues like this are very tough, but I'm sure through compromise and just goodwill, we can all find our way to address these problems and get them taken care of. That's all I have to say.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
So if you are able to move to a different location, like Beth kind of hinted might, that would not affect you adversely, you and your family? I mean, you don't need to load there for your...
Well, I'm sure if, providing that the costs weren't out of the world for moving an operation like that, or, trucking and everything, the more it costs I'm sure for Mr. Patterson to deliver sand, bottom line, it affects all of us. So, thank you.
Scott Spinner.
Scott Spinner. I also work at Patterson Sand. Little redundancy. One thing I want to bring up is not just the jobs that you see the people working in Prairie. All the people in this room, fabrication, maintenance, safety, accounting, all of us are all affected. We all have part of that work there. So by limiting us and our productivity there affects our whole company, not the 30-plus employees you see in Prairie. It affects everyone in this room, all of our departments. And as last man, also as Frank prompted me to come up here, we spend all our money in Prairie. I've spoke to several people here, Heartache Drug, Dick's, Valley Fish and Cheese, Sports World, True Value, Mulligan's, Cavers, Lakewood Marina, the Winnesheek, the Barn, we eat dinner, we do our dry cleaning, we wash our cars, we change our oil, we buy our tires at Helpins, all of us do. And I think you need to really look at that. It affects much deeper than 20 or 30 jobs at the loadout. And all the people in this room that support that, so that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
What question?
Question?
Oh, just a second, Scott. Do you have a question, Judy?
I do,
Okay.
I do. Scott, maybe I'm asking the wrong person here, but did you allude to that all of the Patterson employees who are here tonight are Prairie du Chien residents?
I don't believe so. I actually live in McGregor myself.
Oh, okay, but you
But
come here
I
too.
do probably 90% of my shopping in Wisconsin, just of location.
Okay.
And no, I don't know everyone's exact location. I do know several people in this room personally that spend a lot of their disposable income also in Prairie and doing business in Prairie. I can't speak for everyone.
Sure, no, I understand that. And maybe Beth or Kyle might have a figure for how many
Right.
Prairie du Chien residents they employ.
I think the point is that all of us work on Prairie du Chien Rail in some form or another. We all have part of that. It's a big team, a large family environment. We're all grateful of the employer and our jobs. Okay?
Thank you.
Yep.
Beth, do you have a number? Just, can you give us that number? Employee?
Yes, 37 employees are from Prairie du Chien.
37.
37 of our 169. There are also truckers that would take our total employment up to about 200. I'm sorry, I can't comment. I don't have that number as to how many of the truckers live in the area.
So 37 actually live here, you have 169. I'm just repeating it so the people at home, because they couldn't hear you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have Michael Murphy.
Mayor, Council, good evening.
Good evening.
The last time I was in here, I believe it was at first, there was a number of questions that were really cited at silicosis. And, we can all come up with specific information, but I've actually brought a short article that I'd like to read that is more or less a counterpoint relative to some of the information that we hear. And this is from Michael McCoy, and it's entitled, "Let's Have a Reasonable Discussion About Silica." And this gentleman saying is a board-certified industrial hygienist, toxicologist, and environmental health consultant with Wisconsin Industrial Sand Association. I read with interest about a recent meeting sponsored by a Minnesota group opposing a mine. Unfortunately, the information provided at the meeting was misleading at best. The Mayo Clinic's Dr. Wayne Firestein, for example, provided an incomplete story about the impacts of crystalline silica. Silica is one of the most common materials on Earth, and most people are exposed to it daily in their homes, on the road, and everywhere they go. Science classifies potential adverse health effects related to crystalline silica dust exposure as occupational. They typically present themselves in workers exposed to high-level, long-term concentration of dust as part of their jobs. Fire scene did not discuss the important distinction between constant and casual exposure. He also ignored a key fact. There has never been a reported non-occupational health impact from environmental exposure to respirable silica in the United States. He also failed to mention that silica-related disease among workers has dropped dramatically due to federal regulations and more sophisticated controls. So in the end analysis, what this gentleman says is everyone can have an opinion, but not everyone can have their own facts.
You have a question?
Yeah, did you say that article was written by a man who's employed by the Industrial Sand Association?
That's absolutely accurate.
Okay.
Could you provide that a copy since you've read that document? We can just put that in the public record.
And I don't know how many of the council members have seen or been steered to a movie called Gasoline by Michael Fox, I believe. He's the gentleman who did it for HBO. But there's also a counterpoint, and I'd like to give the mayor and the council an opportunity to view that. I can give you the CD if you'd like, and that's called Gasoline. Or Frack Nation, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, your 3 minutes are up. Aaron has something you want to...
I appreciate all the comments. I appreciate this. Let me, I want to say I'm bursting some bubbles here. The position that staff has developed as the proceedings move forward is based on zoning. It is not based on health whatsoever. Now, please, I do not want to see it misinterpreted that we don't care about your health, the workers or the neighbors. We do. But we're simply, after being directed by the mayor to explore this, have come up with the theory that zoning is where we would best request this opinion or this ruling. Because as many of these as I get, I'll get as many on the opposite side. And that will be years of deliberation, and nobody on our staff is qualified to make any determination regarding health. Zoning, we can. Health, we cannot. That is another federal or state jurisdiction. So I appreciate, I think I won't speak for the council, but it is informative. Zoning is where we're looking. And we've identified some very clear statutory language in our city code. But it is not health. It is not minimalizing it. Don't misinterpret it. That is not where we would take our argument. It would be simply zoning.
Okay. Dean Goodman?
My name's Dean Goodman. I live here in Prairie, and I actually live right down by where we did the loading at for Patterson Sand. And potentially this could take food off my family's table if we are to lose this loading spot, because potential customers we have in the future and customers we have now, if we're to lose this, then Kyle probably has to let people go. I've been here for 3 years, and he's been a great boss. And I just want you to realize, please be careful what you do, and please don't lose my job. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate again, I don't think any of us have the intent of putting Patterson Sand Company totally out of business. It's just, we want them to be somewhere where the zoning is right for it, in my opinion. That's what we're, like Aaron said, that's what we're looking at. We're not looking to put them out of business. So let's get that straight right there. Okay, the next one on the list is Gary Dickmeyer.
Mayor, City Council, Mayor, thank you. I just had to reiterate what Scott and Dean said. I relocated here from Minnesota about 19 months ago. My family does all our shopping here. Although I pay taxes in Iowa, I live in Clayton, Iowa. We do about 90% of our shopping here too. And I'd say, top of my head, we probably utilize and support about 33 businesses here. We bank here. We use the healthcare system here, and I just want to reiterate that without this rail loadout and your zoning issue, I do feel it would possibly affect my job. So, Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Edie Ehlert,
I hope I'm saying that right.
thank you. Edie Ehlert, thank you. I'm co-coordinator of Crawford Stewardship Project, and I want to thank you all for dealing with this issue. I was particularly pleased to hear what you were saying, Ken, about the people in the neighborhood. They've lived there a long time, and your zoning has supported their neighborhood as a good place to live, and that's obviously the work that needs to get done. I appreciate you doing the work. There's lots of research to be done, and none of us who are in various ways in planning commissions and local government realize what we sort of set ourselves up for when we get elected and when we work on these boards. It's a lot of work, and I'm begging you to do the research and do as much as you can to make all of your citizens safe, because ultimately you are the ones that are in charge of the health and safety of your citizens. So thank you for pursuing the zoning issue, because I think it's a big one. Thank you.
Thank you. John Lockner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I appreciate you guys clarifying why we're here. We're here talking about zoning. What started this discussion as part of the neighborhood is the area where Patterson Sand loads is not zoned for that type of operation. And be it that violating of a zoning law, which the way we see it, we are looking for a determination whether or not that applies. And the federal government does hold the cards, but there are cases where city ordinances, state laws can preempt their preemption that they don't have to follow local ordinances, and that's what we're looking for. Certainly the importance of zoning is why we're here. If it was zoned industrial, we wouldn't be having this meeting. If zoning laws didn't exist, I'm sure a lot of us could create jobs and maintain jobs throughout the city had we ignored existing zoning laws. But what we're looking for is the council to look at what we can do to enforce that zoning law, as well as help Patterson Sand find a location within the valley here that is zoned properly for their loading, which I think will preserve jobs, as well as accommodate what we're looking for in the neighborhood is we bought property there, we moved there, based on the fact that there wasn't an industrial loading zone in the middle of our neighborhood. Now there is. Patterson Sand claims that preemption says they don't have to follow local zoning laws, but there is recourse through the Surface Transportation Board where we can find that determination whether or not they are preemptive, and that's what we're here to see is if there's an option we have to go forward to enforce the zoning laws that apply to that parcel. Thanks for your time, and I appreciate it.
John, your question? Go ahead.
Just to clarify, and make sure I'm right, that loading has been happening down there prior to Patterson.
Loading has been happening down there prior to Patterson, probably after the Milwaukee Road pulled out, but we're talking about the lumber company showing up maybe once every 2 months for an afternoon, not running 24 hours, 7 days a week, horns honking, reverse beeping, dust, lights, and certainly even if it is zoned industrial, there's certain rules that have to be followed related to light pollution, noise pollution, as well as dust.
Okay, we have one more on the list. Alan Mulligan? Sorry.
I'm spelling my penmanship's not too good. I am Alan Mulligan. I started working with Patterson about a year ago. And the very first day we got done, first night we got done, we were asked to clean up the sand. And I looked around me and I'm like, there's sand everywhere. What do you mean clean up the sand? This beautiful white sand, people would Acapulco for this. But we had to clean up the sand. Every time I come back to work, gone for a couple of days, a new SOP, new standard operating procedure. Not banging the lids shut, turning down the lights, not tooting the horns. The list went on and on. We moved on to the new site, and it was the same thing all over again. And if you go in our officers, SOPs all over. Constantly, tonight we went over a whole bunch of them again. Kyle and his engineers have done everything that's been asked of them. And I know this isn't about putting Patterson out now, but in the future, if it comes to a zoning issue where you have that choice, I'm hoping you choose to cooperate, like you have been, with Kyle and keep this business down here. I wouldn't have to be here tonight. I actually don't have to be here tonight, but today's my last day working with Kyle Patterson. I got hired in another position full-time. It's a little bit getting older, so the physical demands of this job are a little bit more than I'm used to. So I came here tonight because I believe what Kyle's doing, the work he's been doing, and I hope you work with Kyle and Patterson to continue this company down here. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, you want to get that from Tom, or you want the motion? Go ahead, Kevin.
I want a separate motion for the motion. I want to change my motion.
Why don't you read the motion back? It's been a while. Let's make sure everybody understands it.
Motion by Hines, second by Munson, is to request an informal regulatory clarification from the Surface Transportation Board on whether or not the Patterson sand operation, as structured, falls within federal preemption. At the same time, ask the Surface Transportation Board to investigate this operation in terms of its compliance with federal environmental, noise, and safety regulations. And at the same time, to submit a request to the Wisconsin River Rail Transit Commission that owns the improvements upon which the WSOR operates to find that the transload operation is in violation of the lease agreement between WSOR and WRRTC.
I guess I have a question. It makes all sense to me until that last part where it's saying we want to find that they're in violation of a lease agreement.
I thought we cut.
No, we struck the words "and for it to cease."
How about, instead of in violation, can we say to make sure they're in compliance with their lease? I don't think we're looking for a violation. Obviously, we don't want to see violations.
How about to determine whether it is in compliance?
Right, sure.
And what exactly, I guess, what is this lease that we think that possibly there's an issue with? I guess I don't have a lot of information about that, what I'm voting on.
Okay, maybe Garth can start.
Garth, can you clarify on the Wisconsin River Rail Transit Commission for everybody?
Well, you know, there are a number of layers to this. The DOT's involved, the Wisconsin River Rails, Transit Commission's involved, Patterson's involved, so there are all these different layers. And there is a lease agreement between the railroad and the Wisconsin River Rail Transit Commission, which Crawford County is one of the members of the Wisconsin River Rails Transit Commission. And that lease includes language that the railroad operations need to comply with federal regulations such as the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. So this request would just be to make sure that the operation is complying with those regulations per the lease agreement.
Frank? We're going to vote here yet. Go ahead.
Well, I want to get things clear before I...
Okay, go ahead.
There was a few times that you announced that this all had to do with zoning, but now I hear the motion, you want to make sure they're following noise, water pollution, lease agreements and all that. And every time, I'm not trying to argue, I'm just trying to get this clear. You kept saying zoning, but then in the motion I keep hearing all these other issues brought up. So are we looking at a big picture or are we looking at one thing as zoning?
Okay, yes, I'll answer that. Yeah, I think they are in violation of our zoning laws if they're not preempt right now. Okay, so that is one thing we have to determine. But at the same time, I think it's just prudent to make sure that they are also following, for instance, the Clean Air Act. Like, if you look through this stuff, they did not get a permit because they're a temporary site. So they're exempt from filing any Clean Air Act things. But because they're a temporary site, but now they've been there for over 12 months. So I want to make sure that if they are going to stay there, that they do go forward and comply with the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act. I mean, they need to do those things. That's federal law. So I guess if we're asking the Surface Transportation Board, I just want to, just make sure that they are doing these things.
Okay, I just have and I guess that my first statement was, didn't we get this information when we when they first were in operation about if they weren't being monitored, where did they get a letter from the DNR office about air quality, about their shrouds not being in place? They got those fixed. Now I hear that they're getting a plan for the stormwater runoff. I believe that they are being monitored by the DNR, which we asked the DNR to do a few months ago. So I keep thinking that we keep going up the hill, sliding back, going up. Why don't we stick to the one issue that the mayor brought up a few times? It's about the zoning. I feel that they are being monitored by the DNR, air quality and water control.
The answer to that, Frank, is we had some complaints from the residents, and I believe I directed Garth to email his contact at the DNR to do a request, come down, do some air sampling and that. And then I think after that, I think a couple of private citizens also contacted Mr. Sellers from the DNR. So that's where that came from. So were they being monitored originally? I don't know.
What previous meetings we had noise monitors, graphs where they showed different noise monitoring. We had air quality samples and stuff, and I remember sitting at this meeting voting to allow this to happen if they were in compliance with all the DNR rules.
And I think the air monitoring information, all that information we got was supplied by Pattison at that time, not the DNR. Am I right on that, Beth? Right?
Correct, our perimeter monitoring.
Kevin, you have something else?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, so that was supplied by Pattison, and I think it's, all I'm saying is that, like, there's been tons of cuts to the DNR, and I think he did come down here as a request from the citizens. So, and I think he is trying very hard to comply with the DNR and with these federal regulations. But if we can appeal to a larger body just to make sure, so we can give that assurance to the neighbors that yes, we have applied to the Surface Transportation Board, and yes, it is being monitored because they are asking and making sure the DNR comes down and does that. Because I don't think they just naturally go around and visit all these sites. They just don't have the employees to do that. So that is just, I just wanted that in there for the insurance for the neighbors. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, I think Pattison would even like that. If they came down and they tested and said it's fine, I mean, I think it helps all parties. It will just give us more information.
Judy?
So if you don't mind, just as a point of clarification, what parts of our motion that we're going to be voting on actually then do address the zoning that we're concerned about?
I believe the first part, the request for the informal regulatory clarification from the Surface Transportation Board, whether it's federally preempt, we have identified 3 potential sections of our zoning ordinance which we have reason to believe they are violating. Riverfront district, parking requirements, and air pollution. Admittedly, the air pollution one's probably the weakest because these are alleged violations. They have not been fined, they have not been penalized.
Sure.
What year was it zoned this? Was it just recently? Was it the 50s?
No, you didn't have a zoning code in the 1950s. I would imagine mid-80s when that zoning district was created. 1984, 1985.
Okay,
Before that, I don't think the city had a comprehensive zoning code.
Go ahead. Good.
Okay, I put those in the motion just because I think the more information we have, the better. Because now if you talk to the neighbors, they have silica dust all over their cars. If you talk to Kyle, that's from the roads because they put sand on the roads. And so, I mean, the more monitoring, the more information we can have, the better we can all understand the situation. So I think it's never a bad idea to get as much information as we can on something.
Just for the record, so we're covering all our bases, we also did receive correspondence besides the reference to the letter from Gloria Wall, Edie Alert, and we did provide that to the council. Aaron Marks, that was provided to the council, and Greg Russell, that was sent to the forwarded to the council via email, and you also have written documents in front of you, so those will be entered into the record as well.
Any other questions? We'll do a roll call vote.
Okay. A yes vote is to move forward with the 3 items in the motion. Time.
Aye.
Kozelka.
No.
Lays.
Aye.
Ames.
Aye.
Solomon.
No.
Fleshner.
Aye.
Boylan.
Aye.
Pence.
No.
Tittlebach.
Aye.
Munson.
Aye.
Hine.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
The motion passes 9-3. We will need a secondary motion because this will require an expenditure.
I'll move that we do not spend, that we spend up to the 5,000 that Tom had mentioned.
And the 5,000 was, the information was relayed to me this morning for the minimal. If it goes over 5,000, I will have to come back because we have a motion. This money will come from the city's contingency fund. We need a second.
I'll second that.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, my concern is now Tom is estimating that it will not go above 5,000. I think then, is there a cap that we're gonna consider? Because if this is, you know, like.
There is, it's $100,000. That's all you have in the contingency fund.
No, what I'm saying is like, for this particular issue, it's investigatory, and we did not budget for an in-depth, go-to-the-wall investigation on this, and we've got to be prudent about the rest of the budget. We can't devote the entire contingency, or what could be a big chunk that was not accounted for in the budget. So we're still caught in that loop where the budget was established. We have to stick to the budget. We can use a portion of the contingency, but we still can't, we have to have a cap on this, because I don't think we should come back and say, well, now it's another 5,000 we need.
The motion is to establish a cap at $5,000.
Oh,
If it
okay.
goes over 5,000,
Yeah.
I will have to come back here and ask you to expend more dollars.
Okay, that was the part I was wondering. Okay.
Janine?
I'm confused. If we're going to turn this over to somebody to give us an opinion and information, aren't we at the mercy of whatever they decide to bill us? And if the bill comes at $7,500 and you're capped at 5,000, are you just going to send them a little letter that says, oh, by the way, we can only spend 5,000? Or are you going to let them know ahead of time that we are capped at 5,000 and give us your $5,000
It
worth?
undoubtedly means the bill will be $49.99.99, but that's typical. I mean, I have a cap. And this was the number that we developed this morning, was 5,000. I think, Tom, you said if we go the other route, which is the binding argument, minimum of 15,000 was the budget we figured. I mean, Tom, no offense to Tom, he doesn't have the expertise. I'm going to have to look potentially at outside legal counsel to draft this letter. I mean, this isn't something I can just type and send off to the Surface Transportation Board. It's not going to see the light of day. It has to be a formal document.
Maybe Ryan Baird can tell you.
Yeah. Can we hire you?
I think that'd be a
Conflict of interest, but maybe he has some associates.
I'm just saying, we don't know the number. We think it's reasonably going to be 5,000. If you put a cap on it and it goes over, I have to come back and ask you for additional funds. This is not a budgeted item.
Okay.
Yep, good.
You put a cap the first time, 5,000, then, well, we're almost there. You come back and say, if we had another 2,500, then again, I don't know, you get a three lawyers in a room, and the bill starts going up mighty quick. At budget time, these department heads came in here, and we fought over $1,200 at some items that we had to cut from the budget and do this and that. The contingency fund was set up for an emergency fund when things sprang up. I know some people, some of the residents down there might feel that this is an emergency, but I feel that over the last 2 years that we were told, we were given information that the federal government and the railroad supersede all our local ordinances. Otherwise, I wouldn't have voted in the past if I wouldn't have got that information. And the rest of you got the same information because everybody here was on the council besides perhaps Mr. Lays. Now, all I'm trying to say is, think about this, people. 5,000 could lead into 10,000, could lead into 15 to 20. Think about it a second, because 5,000 is a lot of money.
Did you have something else you wanted to?
Okay, isn't the motion capped at 5,000, so it doesn't just go to 10 to 20 without more decisions on this board's part?
I
mean, the
legally,
motion is capped at 5, right? So that's capped at 5.
yeah, I legally could not spend more than $5,000 without coming back to the council.
I know you couldn't, but you'd come back to the council and say, we need another 2,500 to finish this. So the same people that voted for the $5,000 would go, okay, we need another $2,500. So even though you have to come back to the council, I feel that it's going to keep building up.
We don't know that. That's the whole thing.
I know.
Right? I mean, we can sit here all night and say what ifs.
I know.
We have a motion to second, Judy, and I'll allow you, and then we're going to vote.
All right, thank you. We started with Kathleen saying that she didn't believe that this was going to cost anything, and now we're up to 5,000. But my question is, are we the only people that can petition the Surface Transportation Board for information?
No, private residents can file, and I did convey that information to certain residents over a year ago. But I could, as a citizen of Prairie du Chien, on my own, have filed. You have that option. They're an advisory board. I went on their website. There are numerous opinions that were filed by groups of citizens because they're named, and we've been reading them. So that is an option. That is correct. Ironically, Patterson Sand could also file to clarify the issue. They believe they prevail, that would seal it.
Read the motion back so everything's clear. And then we'll vote.
The motion is in reference to the previously approved motion by the council directing staff to expend no more than $5,000, the funds to come from the city's contingency fund.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Vote.
Time.
Aye.
Kozelka.
No.
Lays.
Aye.
Ames.
No.
Solomon.
No.
Fleshner.
Aye.
Boylan.
Aye.
Pence.
No.
Tittlebach.
Aye.
Munson.
Aye.
Hine.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
That motion passes 8-4. That's it. Nothing left.
Yeah, Ron?
I'd like to say a couple words about silicosis. That word has been bandied around a good deal. There is such a thing. My father suffered from it for years, but he was an industrial potter. He worked in a factory making toilets for the Kohler company. I don't know whether an open-air operation like the one we're talking about would also be that kind of a hazard, and I would like to find out. We have a Crawford County Health Department that represents everybody in Prairie du Chien, State Department of Health Services. I would like to get an opinion from somebody as to whether this is a public health hazard or not.
We need to seal the health issue. No offense, Alderman Lays, but this is the email that I sent to the Crawford County Health Department on February 13th. I'm writing to you today at the request of the City of Prairie du Chien. Concerns have recently been raised about the possible health risks of the Patterson sand and loading operations along the Highway 18 bypass. The question has been posed to me as whether the Crawford County Health Department would be willing to provide an opinion or has inquiries and/or complaints about this operation. If so, I would share this information with our Protection and Health Committee. I look forward to your response and appreciate your time. CC, Gene Tittlebach, Protection and Health Committee. That was on February 13th. I received an answer back on February 20th. Gloria Wall, Dear Aaron, Crawford County Public Health has not received any complaints or inquiries about the Patterson unloading operations. I did hear from a personal relative that more dust is in their home. Please find attached the state's fact sheet on silica mining. I can only follow the opinions of others before me, as I have no personal experience with frac sand mining. Crawford County Land and Water lead a study of frac sand mining borrowing from other counties, a possible ordinance, which you will have on your agenda next week regarding non-metallic mining operations. We met by phone several of the key players who have frac sand mining in their area. We discussed their ordinances with them and their insights. This information is reflected in the possible ordinances to control dust, noise, protect the groundwater, and safety. The committee should have been forwarded to you. They have been. If not, I can get a copy from Soil and Water to forward to you. We already have that. Protection and Health has already approved that mining ordinance. That goes before the council next week. That's the response.
Let's keep nagging.
Pardon?
Let's keep nagging.
Well, I don't nag. I inquire.
All right, we're gonna take a 10-minute break, before we continue on. We need a motion taken and